The story begins with two armies at war, slashing their way to victory and dominance over the enemy. All of a sudden, a huge explosion occurred, leading to the destruction of the bridge. The White Knights became nervous since the bridge was the only way back to their base. Later they found out that the person who destroyed the bridge was none other than Reed, the hero of Altine. Reed heard a familiar voice as he had expected this particular person to show up, Elria, the sage. After showcasing her ability by casting multiple spells, Reed asked her if they could finally settle the score after fighting hundreds of battles with each other. As Elria reminded Reed that they had fought 629 times, Reed appreciated that he was always reminded every time they fought. Even though Reed kept forgetting how many times they had fought, he knew he couldn't afford to show his pathetic side to others on the battlefield since he is called a hero. Elria felt the same way since she had also been called a sage. In the Altine Kingdom, there was a man referred to as a hero who had thrown himself into numerous battlefields without losing, and had never once fallen to his knees until the very end of his life. The country Vigalta fought the Altine Empire and was led by a lady referred to as a sage. Using the concept of magic, she overturned the unfavorable tides of war and increased the power of the entire country by spreading magic technology. The hero and sage had always met on the battlefield. They never slept, never rested, and always fought as if they were enjoying the battle. The only person the hero, Reed Frieden, could go all out against was none other than Elria Caldwin, the sage. However, their unique relationship would soon end. Eventually, a conclusion will be reached between the two. A white-haired man from the Altine Empire named Lord Frieden received a report that Elria the sage had been defeated. When Lord Frieden asked Lyot the messenger if the information was true, Lyot responded that the information was extremely credible since it came from a spy who had infiltrated Vigalta. Lord Frieden sat down, relieved, thinking that he would die first before Elria. When Lord Frieden was informed of a royal decree sent by the higher-ups, he had assumed that he would be regarded as useless after the passing of the sage. However, after hearing the decree in full detail, the white-haired man became enraged at the Altine higher-ups for ordering such an unnecessary invasion. Lyot understood that what lay before them was the greatest opportunity they ever had. However, the people who were present on the battlefield knew that both Reed Frieden and Elria Caldwin did not want to waste the lives of the soldiers and decided to fight in a one-on-one battle. Frustrated, Lyot wished not to use the death of the great sage for war, but rather mourn for her death. The person known as the hero, Reed Frieden, appreciated Lyot's words and told him that he would be sure to convey his words properly to her. When Reed removed his armor and grabbed his sword, Lyot was curious about what he was going to do. Reed responded that he can't be dressed up for war to meet a friend. At the border of Altine and Vigalta, Reed dashed towards the Vigalta country. Reed remained unfazed after multiple arrows were launched at him. After the soldiers of Vigalta finally recognized that it was Reed, it was already too late as Reed was now right in front of their mages. The mages tried to stop Reed, but he was too fast and strong for them. When Reed was about to land a punch on one of the mages, he suddenly stopped. Reed was then attacked from the back by Tiana, Elria's disciple. With tears in her eyes, Tiana asked Reed if he had come to invade their country. With the full force attack of the mages of Vigalta, Reed did not defend himself and sustained heavy injuries. After removing the shards that were stuck on his body, Reed told Tiana that he only came to say goodbye to Elria. Reed eventually landed at the Vigalta royal capital and punched his way in. As the soldiers mourned for the death of their sage, they asked Reed what he was planning to do with Elria. Reed wished to die on his terms after he finished talking to Elria and asked the soldiers not to get in his way. In front of Elria's body, Reed knelt and complimented how strong the people she had raised. Reed was still amazed by her, even though she had passed. Many people still looked up to her. Even though they couldn't decide who was stronger between the two of them, Reed enjoyed fighting Elria for over 50 years. Thinking that if they were in a different position, Reed knew that they could have been friends. Reed then lay beside Elria as he slowly passed away. As everything turned to darkness, Reed was confused when he woke up as a baby and curious about the lady in front of him. After having his special milk prepared for him, he cried out as he had no idea where he was. 18 years had passed and Reed was now a teenager. Working as a lumberjack, Reed was asked to cut down large trees. After felling the tree with one swing, his colleagues were very impressed and glad he was around to help them. Carrying the huge tree on his shoulder, Reed asked his colleague where he should take it. They were suddenly surprised after seeing a new species of squirrel from the tree that Reed had taken down. Everyone was so excited that the reincarnated Reed thought the place was genuinely peaceful. Reed was certain that he would spend his days like that in his current life. The news of a new species of squirrel was published in the papers, and Reed's photo was included. A woman immediately stood up as she became excited after finally finding Reed. At Reed's home, his mother suddenly rushed towards him asking what he had done. Reed became confused as he didn't remember doing anything in particular. His mother then informed him that a noble from the royal capital was looking for him. and that he was asked to visit the village chief's house. After hearing that a noble was looking for him, Reed immediately thought of mages that fought against magical beasts with magic. However, he was still curious, since he was sure he had nothing that could be of concern to them. Reed's mother had the same thoughts, but she was still nervous since they specifically called Reed's name. She became even more nervous after noticing that Reed was rather calm after learning that a person with nobility was looking for him. Reed couldn't explain to his mother that he was no longer surprised after waking up and finding out that 1,000 years had passed. Reed learned in school that his old hometown, the Empire, had long been destroyed and absorbed into the enemy country, Vigalta. The country had now become a magic kingdom, and magic had become something that anyone could use. As Reed left to head to the village chief's house, his mother asked him to pretend that she had no knowledge of his actions in case he would cause a problem. After hearing Reed's nonchalant response, his mother sobbed as she suggested that they should atone for their sins together. After leaving his house, Reed was asked by the people in the town what he had done. He was a little embarrassed since rumors had already spread throughout the village. Everyone then gathered at the magic vehicle, as such machinery was privately owned, and only a high-ranking noble could obtain it. The village chief dashed towards Reed after seeing him and immediately asked what he had done. When Reed asked if a big-shot noble was in the village chief revealed that a distant descendant of the royal family in the Vigalta Magic Kingdom was looking for him. When Reed asked the intention of the noble that they personally look for him, the village chief asked the same thing and was only told that Reed would know once they met. When Reed finally went inside the room, he froze as he saw Elria once again. When Elria called Reed's attention, she was surprised when Reed suddenly apologized. Confused as to why Reed was using honorifics, Reed explained that since he was in the presence of a noble from House Caldwin, he had to watch his tone. When Reed asked if they had met before, Elria became disappointed. However, when Reed asked if she was looking for a guy who was a hero, Elria's eyes widened with excitement, but then realized that the Reed she knew did not talk like that. Reed then eventually revealed that he was indeed that hero she was looking for. He then asked if she was the same Elria from his past, and Elria responded that she was, and tried proving it by informing Reed what she likes to drink and do. Reed couldn't confirm if the information she mentioned was true since the only thing he knew about Elria was just her name. Elria suggested that they could just fight each other to find out, a suggestion that Reed could agree to. However, there weren't many places around that Elria could use her magic. Elria then told Reed that if he could dispel her magic in 10 seconds, then she would know it was the real Reed. The two then transferred to an open field, which made Elria curious where they were. Reed revealed to her that they were in his workplace. Curious, Elria asked what work he was doing in the village. When Elria learned that Reed was mostly doing regular hard labor, she asked for the reason. After informing Elria that he couldn't use magic, Reed still asked her not to hold back since he still had strength from his previous life. After Elria agreed to the terms, she then cast a huge fireball and launched it at Reed. Clenching his fist, Reed positioned himself and then punched the huge fireball and totally destroyed it. As the presence of the strong wind became a witness to the little battle, Reed asked Elria how many times they had fought. After informing Reed the exact number, the two then had a familiar conversation which they usually had in their past life. While Elria was glad that Reed and her finally met, Reed on the other hand never thought that they would meet again. Elria then shared that since she was reincarnated, she had assumed that Reed would also be reincarnated. Reed then became curious how she found him. After Elria shared that she found him in the news article, Reed was more surprised that Elria would even check the articles of the countryside. When Reed asked Elria what reincarnation really was, Elria explained that it was an event where one inherits the memories and abilities of their previous life, precisely called reincarnation magic. When Reed assumed that Elria used the reincarnation magic, Elria explained that she did not. Reincarnation magic was just a name that Elria gave on a provisional basis. The magic exists in theory, but Elria has no knowledge in making it. Elria then became annoyed when Reed teased her for not knowing the procedure. Elria then shared that if what had really happened to them was the reincarnation magic, she would also look the same as what she was before. Elria was then annoyed that Reed did not notice that she was now human instead of an elf. Theorizing that Reed's inability to use magic was also caused by the reincarnation magic, Elria asked what were the results for his magic aptitude test. Reed revealed that he accidentally broke the examination device, which he ended up receiving an earful. When Reed shared his wish to live peacefully in the countryside, Elria was annoyed since she knew that Reed was as strong as her and was used to being known as a hero. Mad at the fact that only mages are allowed to fight, Elria suggested to Reed that he should marry her. Seeing Reed's confused look, Elria then explained her plan of Reed becoming a part of the Caldwell family. which he would then become a mage after taking the Magic Academy's entrance exam. Thinking that the plan was somewhat cheating, Elria explained herself that it was not cheating since Reed had the capabilities to fight her for over 50 years. Elria could not accept that the people around them do not recognize Reed's real power. Reed was glad to hear the offer but was not sure about Elria's proposal. Elria then suggested that they see who was stronger between the two of them. After hearing Elria's words, Reed responded that he would not run or hide, as he would always accept Elria's challenge. When Reed finally met the village chief after speaking with Elria, the visibly worried chief asked if it was bad news. While Reed explained that he was going with Elria to the royal capital, Elria, on the other hand, was extremely embarrassed after suggesting to Reed that they should get married. As soon as Elria stepped out of the room, she was surprised as the people from the village were so eager to meet her. Seeing Elria turning red from embarrassment, Reed reminded everyone of their manners and emphasized that they wouldn't be able to ride the magic vehicle if they were blocking the way. Elria felt a sense of relief after hearing Reed's words and extending her hand. The village chief agreed with Reed and roughly asked everyone to back off. After thanking Reed, the two then went inside the magic vehicle and set out for the royal capital. While on their way, Elria was so embarrassed at what happened that she was no longer listening to Reed. When Reed called out Elria's attention, she was surprised and immediately turned red since Reed's face was so close. Thinking that Elria must have had a shy personality before reincarnating, Reed suddenly wondered if Elria knew the reason why he couldn't use magic. Elria theorized that it was probably because of Reed's unique magic power. Unlike others whose magic energy is like flowing water passing through the magic circuit, Reed's magic power was like a rock that, if forced, the path itself would break down. Elria mentioned that she would have to construct a special theoretical formula to match Reed's powers, if he wishes to use magic. When Elria mentioned that the process might take a long time since in her previous life, it took her 100 years just to form the basis of her magic theory, Reed was very grateful to Elria as she had solved Reed's 18 years of curiosity. When Elria asked if Reed wanted to use magic, he responded that he only wanted to know what it felt like to use magic. Elria reassured Reed that he would be fine since he still couldn't beat her even if he had magic. When Elria thanked Reed for accepting her proposal, she immediately became embarrassed when Reed mentioned that he was surprised by the sudden proposal. But Reed does agree with Elria, since marriage was the only way for a commoner who cannot use magic to become a mage. Reed also found the marriage convenient as he discussed with Elria how the two of them got reincarnated after 1,000 years. Reed had his suspicions that someone might be involved in their reincarnation, and being a commoner he couldn't do anything about it. Reed also does not want Elria to bear all the burden. Reed then realized that Elria's family name was linked to the royal family. Elria explained that she was the daughter of the royal family and that her disciple, Tiana, inherited her family name. It was then known that the Caldwin family was the lineage of the sage. Reed then asked Elria if she was really fine with him being her fiancé, even though they were enemies in their previous life. Elria had no problem as she did not care that they were once enemies. The two were grateful to one another as they both trusted each other. Reed then shared that he had never once given an engagement speech in his previous life. Reed spent most of his life on the battlefield when he decided to turn down all marriage talks. When Reed asked if his stories were passed down to the future generations, Elria panicked and explained to Reed that his story had been adapted and passed down. Though Elria couldn't bear to tell Reed his adapted story, he reassured him that it was not what he thought. When they finally arrived at Elria's home, Reed couldn't close his mouth after seeing such a huge house. A man then called Elria's name as he landed in front of them. That man was Elria's father, Galleon Cladwin. Enraged that Elria went on another excursion alone, Galleon's anger suddenly changed as he became happy that Elria was honest. Galleon became more proud when Elria mentioned that she had left a note and also told people at the mansion. When Elria mentioned that she had brought her fiancé, Galleon outright rejected her fiancé. When Reed introduced himself, Galleon greeted him energetically and immediately asked him to go home. When Reed responded that he wouldn't be going home, Galleon then asked him to follow him inside the mansion as he then introduced the real head of the family. Galleon then told his wife that Elria had brought her fiancé. Elria's mother, Alicia Caldwin, who was also the head of the Caldwin family, asked her husband to step away since he was being too noisy. When Reed introduced himself to Alicia, she responded that she had never heard of his family name before. As Alicia and Reed spoke to each other, she assessed Reed and told Elria that he was much more level-headed than her. Alicia was then disappointed in Elria, that she would compliment Reed even though her own mother had insulted her. When Elria told her mother that she had finally found Reed, Alicia asked Reed to raise his head as he would be their guest. When Alicia and Reed sat down, Alicia asked what was going on and how things came to be. After assessing Alicia, Reed knew that a mediocre excuse would not work on her. Reed then honestly told Alicia about his plans, to which Alicia accurately guessed that it was Elria's idea. Wondering if Alicia doubted his words, Reed told her that she can confirm it with Elria. However, Alicia mentioned that she didn't need to confirm it since he was indeed the real Reed. Alicia explained that Elria was strange at birth as she spoke Reed's name out of nowhere. After hearing Elria's story that even scared her mother before, Reed was surprised after learning that Elria had been looking for him for a long time without any basis that he was also reincarnated. Reed was surprised when Alicia approved of their marriage. When he asked if she would be okay to hand their house in his hands, Alicia responded that she only wanted to fulfill her daughter's wishes. Reed then shared that Elria was his only equal, and that they've been apart for a very long time. Just like Elria, Reed also never forgot about her as he wondered what Elria would think of the peaceful world he had lived in. After seeing Reed's sincerity, Alicia gave him a passing grade for the proposal. Alicia then mentioned the conditions for accepting the engagement, and that was to qualify as a mage at the same magic academy with Elria. Wondering how he could prove himself, Alicia suggested that Reed could just use his strength. Alicia then called for Galleon as she wanted to test Reed's fighting capabilities. Reed agreed with Alicia's terms and mentioned that he would avoid all of Galleon's attacks and only land one of his own. Before starting the fight, Reed asked for Alicia not to complain if he happens to destroy the whole building. Before Galleon and Reed could engage in their mock battle, they needed to change locations. Alicia explained that the room was a magic training facility managed by the country, allowing non-mages to participate in magic combat. As Alicia prepared to speak with Elria, she requested Galleon to assess Reed's abilities thoroughly. Turning to Reed, Galleon proposed that they should enjoy their mock battle. Prior to the commencement, Reed inquired if Galleon was truly comfortable with the agreed-upon terms. Galleon affirmed, expressing confidence that Reed would find it challenging to land an attack. To sweeten the deal, Galleon added that if Reed could land an attack, he would be allowed to call him Daddy, to which Reed promptly suggested father-in-law as an alternative. As the mock battle began, Galleon's movements were so swift that his fist closed in on Reed's head within seconds. However, Reed proved agile enough to evade the attack, earning Galleon's compliment on his reaction. Attempting a counter with a kick from above, Reed was taken aback when he realized Galleon's fist was approaching him. After his attack was blocked, Galleon intensified his pace, launching serious attacks. Evading Galleon's strikes, Reed was impressed by their power. Excited, Galleon felt the training was akin to sparring with Elria and saw no need to hold back. Reed apologized to Galleon and decided it was time to make his move. In the adjacent room, Elria was startled by a knock on the door. When Alicia entered and sought to talk, Elria promptly interrupted, eager to learn about Reed's situation. After informing Elria that Galleon was currently engaged in a mock battle with Reed, Alicia sought confirmation that Reed was indeed the person Elria had been searching for. Upon Elria's affirmation, Alicia smiled, expressing surprise at Elria finding Reed. Elria, initially worried about being wrong, felt relieved after discovering Reed. When Alicia inquired about Elria's feelings for Reed, Elria admitted her affection. As Elria noticed her confidence waning, she explained that these feelings were new to her, and now seemed the right time to express her liking for him. When Alicia remarked on Reed and Elria thinking alike as if they had shared a past, Elria was taken aback. Although Elria hadn't planned to keep anything about her previous life from her mother, she insisted it was her and Reed's secret. Thanking Alicia for her understanding, Elria was surprised when Alicia asked if she had confessed her feelings to Reed. Alicia expressed disappointment after learning that Elria had not yet communicated her feelings. Having spoken with Reed, Alicia sensed he was a good man. Intrigued, Alicia teased Elria, attempting to coax the truth from her. Contemplating Reed, Alicia considered acknowledging him and having Galleon train him. When Elria inquired about what Reed and Galleon were currently doing, Alicia disclosed the terms for approving their engagement, evaluating Reed's abilities. Elria then revealed to Alicia that Reed was unable to use magic, though he was very strong, putting Galleon in danger. After Galleon was blasted off from the house, Alicia's expression immediately displayed regret. Alicia was still dumbfounded after witnessing her husband being blasted off from their house. When Reed saw Elria, he asked if she had seen Galleon. After learning that Galleon had flown past their room, Reed was shocked by the damage he had caused even though he had held back. When Elria asked for an explanation from Reed, he responded that since he was told not to hold back, he tried punching Galleon lightly. After witnessing Reed's power, Alicia asked Elria what Reed really was. Elria smiled and responded that the man she likes was the strongest. After a month had passed since the annex of the Caldwin estate was smashed into pieces, Reed was checking the historical records in the royal library. He expected that the village library might not have the information he needed, but he was surprised that the royal family library also did not contain any history regarding Altine or the hero. When Elria called Reed's attention and told him that he had received a letter, Reed wondered if he had informed the village about the engagement between him and Elria. After reading the letter that came from her mother, Reed shared with Elria how her mother thinks of their engagement as a prank, and that the village chief asked for souvenirs from the royal capital. When Elria asked if he had gone to the royal capital yet, Reed shared that he has since he was thoroughly taught proper manners and courtesy by Alicia. Elria then suggested that they go shopping so that Reed would have something to wear when he takes the examination in the academy. Seeing his outfit, Reed could understand that his appearance may not pass as Elria's fiancé. Before the two leave, Alicia compliments Elria's look and hopes that they enjoy their date. While walking in the street, Elria noticed that the clothes Reed was wearing were familiar. She then asked if those were her father's, to which Reed confirmed it and explained that he had borrowed it from Galleon, though he was hesitant at first after putting Galleon through such an ordeal. Elria then suggested that Reed should focus on finding something that would suit him better. After trying out the clothes, Reed then enjoyed delicious food. Reed complimented the food of the current time as he could tell that the food would have been unthinkable 1,000 years ago. Elria became embarrassed after Reed pointed out that she had breadcrumbs. When Reed tried to remove the breadcrumbs, he suddenly got excited and ended up breaking the table. After having their meal, Elria then asked Reed to follow her as she wanted to show him something. Elria then showed Reed the Vegalta Royal Magic Academy, to which Reed found it very huge. Elria then shared that she could have enrolled in the academy when she was 12 years old but postponed her enrollment because she had to look for Reed. The king also asked Elria to postpone her enrollment since it coincided with the princesses, and as a result, Elria received sweets. When Elria asked Reed if there was someone he liked in his hometown, Reed responded that after living such a long life, he could only see the people as his grandchildren. Reed also shared how he was thinking about her all the time while she was looking for him. Elria expressed how she didn't want to fight Reed and that she wanted to spend time together with him. Glad that she got engaged to Reed, Elria extended her hand and asked Reed to take good care of her. The two shook hands as they agreed on helping each other out. The Royal Magic Academy of Vegalta was a grand institution for mages. Reed was amazed by people from other counties enrolling in such a prestigious academy. Reed then asked Elria how long she was going to hide behind him. Elria was nervous, feeling that everyone was staring at her. Hearing Reed complain that walking was hard, Elria thought a piggyback ride would be easier. Reed pointed out that this would only embarrass her further, and everyone was staring because she was cute. When Elria asked if Reed thought the same, Reed tried to avoid the question, but Elria insisted he respond since it was important to her. Elria was surprised when Reed responded that she was indeed cute, and he would even want to brag about it. Elria was grateful and promised Reed that she would do her best to make him proud. When Reed asked if she could let go of his sleeves, Elria held his arm tighter, mentioning that it was her lifeline. When they finally met a person from the academy, Reed told her they were from the Caldwin family, and they were asked to follow her. The academy staff couldn't believe she was guiding Elria personally, known as the reincarnation of the sage. When she asked Reed how he was related to the Caldwin family, Elria answered that he was her fiancé. It took some time for the academy staff to register what Elria said, and when she finally realized it, she was deeply shocked. After congratulating them, the academy staff asked Reed about his distinguished family. When Reed responded that he was not from a noble family but rather just a commoner, the staff refused to believe Reed's words. They then heard a lady giving everyone a warning that another fire blast from the dragon she was riding would happen again. The staff introduced the lady as Rufus Laelis of the Sirios Federation. The Sirios Federation was a country that specializes in summoning magic, values strength and talent, where one's superiority was determined by what monster they had enslaved. After hearing the benefits of enrolling in the academy, Reed realized it was essentially a proxy war for other countries. Reed was impressed after learning that Rufus was able to handle 4 dragons, earning her the title of Dragon Princess. Elria, jealous of the attention, told Reed that she could summon many things. Reed believed her, and he asked Elria to show him something spectacular next time, to which Elria also agreed. As they arrived at the location for their examination, they were instructed to destroy the object using their magic. When Elria asked if the staff could make it more challenging, Reed warned her not to cause trouble for others. Hearing that Elria was unsatisfied with the examination, the staff summoned a simulated designed beast for training. Satisfied with the updated examination, Elria asked Reed to watch over her. Elria cast multiple magic circles, wanting to show Reed a slightly stronger spell. When Elria destroyed not just the simulated beast but also everything around it, Reed complimented her, though he did not expect the spell to be more flashy. Meanwhile, the staff was sitting on the ground in total disbelief. When Elria shared that she did many things aside from the spell that caused damage, Reed patted her head, amazed, thinking it was like the strongest set of greed. The staff was surprised that Reed was still calm after seeing such a devastating spell. Reed responded that it just became ordinary to him after seeing the spell multiple times. The staff, still in total disbelief, explained that the power produced in Elria's spell was at the same level as a 10th tier magic, something she had never seen anyone other than those registered as special rank mages use. When Reed asked about the evaluation he would get for putting out the destruction left by Elria's spell, the staff explained that since the fire was caused by magic, it would require magic of the same tier to offset it. Reed would be evaluated on par with Elria if he put out the fire. After hearing the explanation, Reed used a spell by just punching the air. After putting out the fire, Elria complimented Reed, saying his punch looked like what he usually did in their past life. Elria then patted Reed's head, complimenting him for being humble. The staff mentioned that the headmaster was calling for both of them. As they met with the headmaster, they were asked to hold back while in the academy. Elise Rummel, the headmaster of Vegalta Royal Magic Academy, was informed by the king that Elria had extraordinary talent in the field of magic, which she witnessed in her office. Elise then asked Elria to use just 5th tier magic, since her spells were so strong that she might end up killing someone. She reminded Elria that if she didn't comply, she would be expelled. Elise then asked Reed what he was, as she could not comprehend his very existence. Reed then asked Elria about the aging progress of the elves since she was once an elf. Reed concluded that Elise stopped growing before she stopped aging, which Elise found insulting. Elise accurately guessed that what Reed did wasn't magic. When she asked what he did, Reed responded that all he did was just a normal punch since he can't use any magic. Regardless of their powers, Elise asked them to hold back. Reed expressed his concern for the request, since he was asked by the head of the Caldwin family to produce reasonable results. Elise mentioned that she had received a report from Alicia regarding their situation, realizing that it was her responsibility for underestimating Reed. To compromise, Elise told them that she could lift the restriction only during exams, but still asked for them to at least not go overboard. Elise then expressed her surprise as she did not expect to hear their names at the same time. Reed became curious about what Elise meant, to which she then explained that it was just a story he had heard from her grandfather that was also passed down only amongst elves. When Reed insisted Elise tell him his story, she revealed that the story of Reed, once called the hero, was in love with the sage. Reed was surprised to learn that the history of the hero had been adapted and turned into a love story, where the hero was in love with the sage. As Elise imagined what it might look like, she shared that the hero was an enemy of the sage, but they both wished for peace. The two had been fighting each other for more than 50 years to prevent any serious damage to their forces. However, during the battle, the sage got sick and died. Upon receiving the news, the hero invaded the Vegalta royal castle all by himself. The hero who arrived at the royal castle was in a tattered and near-death state. Curious about the reason the hero gave for going to the royal castle, Elise found it very cool and shared the exact phrase that Reed used before he passed away. Elise became more excited as she shared her opinion that only lovers would go through such lengths. Elise wished that the sage could hear the thoughts of the hero, as she was sure the sage would be delighted. When Elise tried to share more stories passed down by the elves, Reed raised his hand and thanked Elise for sharing the story with them. Reed then apologized as it seemed Elria was in no shape to continue, and they may have to take their leave. Seeing how easily startled Elria was before dismissing them, Elise asked the two to strictly adhere to the ability restrictions, and then congratulated them on their acceptance to the Vegalta Magic Academy. Although Reed did not think of the story as bad, Elria explained that she did not know what had happened, but the hero's story became so popular that it was passed down among the elves. Elira was ashamed of what happened to their story that she didn't have the courage to tell Reed, thinking that it might make him feel unpleasant. With a sad look, Elria asked if the story was a mistake. Reed released a sigh and told Elria that it wasn't a mistake, and that the story passed down among the elves was something that actually happened. Elria's eyes widened after learning that Reed came to the royal castle alone and battered. Reed then tried to pass it off that he had to get beaten one-sidedly since he had to see and couldn't just kill Tiana. When Elria asked Reed the words he said before his passing, Reed was caught off guard and just told Elria that he didn't say anything. Reed then avoided the conversation as he reminded Elria that there are more important things to do, such as reporting to Alicia and the others that they have passed the exam. Back in the House of Caldwin, Alicia and the others congratulated Reed and Elria for passing and getting into the academy. After informing Reed that they would be commuting from the academy's dormitory, Alicia asked him to take care of Elria since she was shy and clumsy. Galleon grabbed Reed by the shoulders and asked the same thing from Reed. Galleon then asked one more important thing from Reed, which was not to make any advances towards Elria until they're married. Reed respected Alicia and Galleon's request, as he knew that the penalty for breaking those promises was a death penalty. As Reed and Elria began their academy life, they were handed a key to their dormitory room. Curious, Reed asked if he was sharing a room with Elria. The dormitory person responded that in the academy there were nobles who were already engaged or married when they entered. As long as there were no special circumstances, the academy would arrange for them to share the same room. After learning of the policies for engaged students, Reed asked Elria if she was fine with it. Elria expressed her relief that she could stay with Reed and not some random girl. Reed found their situation convenient since Alicia did ask him to take care of Elria, to which Elria was a bit annoyed and told Reed that she was not that hopeless. After entering their dormitory room, Reed was pleasantly surprised as it was a very nice room. When Reed mentioned that he was hungry and planned to cook a meal, Elria was surprised as she did not expect that Reed knew how to cook. When Reed mentioned that he had learned simple cooking during camping trips, Elria remembered that they used to hunt rabbits whenever they saw one. The two then shared their struggles and the activities they enjoyed in their free time. While laughing at how similar their experiences were in the past life, Reed remembered that because of the smell, Elria was able to find him. Elria laughed, remembering such fun memories, and suggested to Reed that they just cook simple meals like they used to. When asked by Reed why she would go out of her way to eat like before, Elria responded that nostalgia might bring out flavors. As the two started cooking and preparing their meals, Elria shared that the last time she cooked was with her mother when she was still young. She remembered that her mother praised her a bit. Unfortunately, other than that, Elria no longer received praises from her mother. Reed patted Elria's head as he reassured her that her mother would praise her since she was now praised throughout generations. After preparing their meal, Reed and Elria had a conversation while eating. Elria was curious about what Reed was like when he was young in the previous life. Reed only remembered that he was always alone. In the previous life, Reed had a weak body when he was a kid. He was always bedridden with a fever, so Reed's memories of his parents were hazy. The Altine Empire was a country where there was a huge gap between the rich and the poor. With the lack of resources and the country's policy to exploit land, kids from the villages were going off to become soldiers, which was the norm at the time. Kids like Reed at the time couldn't become a soldier and were just treated as a burden. Frustrated with having such a weak body, every time Reed got a fever, he would keep on training until he eventually gained the body he has now. While achieving new feats, the people around Reed started to notice his superhuman abilities and ended up calling him a monster. When his own mother also called him a monster, Reed was then driven away and was given to a mercenary group that was passing by at the time. Though the mercenaries pitied Reed at first, when they witnessed how dangerous Reed was, they suddenly changed their view of him. Eventually, no one dared to approach Reed as he had killed enemies who stood in his way. Reed continued being a mercenary while searching for someone like him. His achievements started piling up, and eventually people started calling him a hero. Hearing Reed's struggles, Elria was amazed at Reed for surviving such a harsh environment. Reed was surprised by the sudden compliment, to which Elria explained that she only returned the favor and praised him. Elria pointed out that receiving a compliment makes someone happy, and since Reed had always been alone, he never noticed its value. Now that Reed was no longer alone, Elria promised that whenever Reed works hard, she would praise him a lot. Reed broke out laughing when Elria pointed out that even in their past life, she was way older than him. Elria immediately turned red and annoyed Reed after being called an older sister by him. When Reed and Elria checked the bedroom, they were surprised that they only received one bedroom. Elria could not hide her embarrassment when Reed did not mind that they shared the bed together. When Elria shared that she has some unique habits when sleeping, especially if she was drowsy, Reed offered the bed to her and decided to sleep in the living room. Reed was caught off guard when Elria pulled his sleeve and mentioned that she would feel lonely and wished to sleep together. After hearing Elria's request, Reed could not help it and told her that he would be okay doing anything with her. Scratching his head, Reed was left with no choice and decided to just think about Galleon's face when he sleeps. After spending their first night at the dormitory house, Reed finally woke up as morning arrived. He noticed that his right side felt kind of heavy, but when he realized it was because of Elria, Reed was somewhat glad to have her with him. He tried waking her up, but to no avail. He then instructed her to take a bath to fully wake up. When Elria finally agreed, Reed felt relieved and planned to prepare breakfast while she was still in the bathroom. However, he was caught off guard when Elria suddenly suggested they take a bath together. Seeing that Elria was about to fall asleep again, Reed had no choice but to agree to go to the bathroom together. After preparing a warm bath for Elria, Reed noticed she was still in a daze. When he realized Elria was out of it, he immediately declined when she suggested taking a bath together again. Thinking they would be late for class with such a slow pace, Reed agreed to hold her hand while she took a bath. However, he was once again caught off guard when Elria started stripping in front of him. When Elria had finally undressed, she became confused after seeing Reed covering his face with a towel. Reed then lied, telling her that he bathes while covering his face. Elria bought the lie, went inside the bathtub, and held Reed's hand. The two enjoyed each other's company as they held hands. When they finally arrived at school, Elria was curious why Reed seemed so tired. The drained Reed wasn't sure if it was a good or bad thing that she didn't remember what had happened. As they opened the classroom door, Elria was immediately bombarded by the students waiting for her. Overwhelmed, Elria immediately hid behind Reed and told everyone that he was more amazing than her. Reed was nervous at first when everyone's eyes were fixed on him, but he calmed down after realizing that the students also idolized him. Delighted by their words, Reed introduced himself and announced that he would soon claim the Kaldwin name while being just a commoner. The announcement shocked everyone, as they did not expect Reed to be a commoner. The students were immediately cautious of their words. However, one student still did not believe that a commoner could dispel higher-tier magic from Elria. Reed recognized the student as Farag, the son of the Verminen family. Before entering the academy, Alicia had told Reed about the Verminen family and its long lineage. The current generation had Farag, known for his talent and vast magic power, though Alicia had a different opinion about Farag, assessing him as self-centered and always blaming others. Holding back her anger, Alicia asked Reed to do something about Farag's character if he ever got a chance. Farag doubted the credibility of Reed's connections and insulted him for ruining the Kaldwin name that had protected Vigalta for a long time. Reed remained calm and responded that Farag could confirm his connections with Alicia himself. Farag became more enraged, not accepting that Reed, a commoner, could enter the academy. Reed explained that he had properly passed the written and practical exams and gained Principal Elise's approval. Farag became more annoyed when Reed tried talking to him calmly, accusing him of having a creepy grandpa attitude. Farag's classmates tried to calm him down, warning him against butting heads with someone connected to the Kaldwin family. Still, Farag did not believe Reed had any connection, and guessed he might just be some servant. But when Reed pulled Elria and announced that he was her fiancé, everyone was in total shock. Reed and Elria looked for seats, barely containing their laughter while everyone was left speechless. Reed expressed his satisfaction after seeing Farag's bewildered look. When Elria reminded Reed of his bad attitude, he defended himself, explaining that he scolded them since they were getting cocky. After hearing Reed's explanation, Elria realized why the Altine soldiers were so obedient. A student called Reed and Elria's attention, offering them a seat. Grateful for the offer, Reed introduced himself, and the student introduced himself as Weasel Blanche. Elria mentioned that she had heard of the Blanche family name before. Weasel revealed that his family were magic equipment engineers, and the tools Elria used were made by his sister. Elria immediately changed her attitude, and the three continued having a pleasant conversation. Since the Blanche family were engineers, Elria was curious why Weasel took the test for mages even though there were classes for magic engineers. Weasel explained that he was more of the practical type. On top of being a mage, Weasel wanted to know what's not important, not just for himself but also for his surroundings, creating a more practical magic tool, which was his goal. When Weasel mentioned that he might be a nuisance, he was surprised when Reed responded that he didn't mind. Reed explained that people who complained about the tools just didn't understand them. Weasel's act of creating a good magic tool aligned with the school's pursuit and development of magic ideology. After gaining some confidence from Reed's words, Weasel asked Reed if he could look at his magic tool. Curious after learning that Reed was able to dispel Elria's Tier 10 magic, Elria explained that Reed's magic powers were special, and he couldn't use magic tools since his mana flow was broken. Disappointed, Weasel then asked Reed if he could destroy the object in his hand. Weasel reassured Reed that it was fine as it was a spare. He also explained that he wanted to know under what circumstances the magic tool would break down as a magic engineer. After boasting that the tools he personally created had high durability, he was in total disbelief when Reed easily broke his tool. After examining his broken tool, Weasel asked if Elria had any idea of the phenomenon surrounding Reed. When Elria explained that Reed's magic was different from everyone else, Weasel agreed with her theory as he was still unsure why the protective magic and engravings were damaged. Weasel shared that he may have to observe and analyze the tool a couple of times since he still couldn't grasp the explanation or come up with a conclusion. When Weasel asked Reed how he was able to obtain such magic power, Reed responded that he had already forgotten about it since it happened a long time ago. He then noticed someone eavesdropping in their conversation and called the student's attention. The student hiding underneath the table was so surprised that she ended up hitting her head. Though the student claimed she was not a stranger, Reed still asked for security. The student then introduced herself as Millis Lambat from the village called Noabra. Millis also shared that since she was enrolled through scholarship, she was thinking of using it as an opportunity to make human friends. When Elria approved of Millis, and was then promoted from a suspicious person to a classmate, Millis was ecstatic as she shared how she had thought about the introduction all night. After Reed asked Millis the reason why she was eavesdropping, Millis responded that she was just searching for anyone that she thought she could reach out to. When Reed mentioned that she could reach out like usual, Millis cried out as she found it impossible. Even though Reed tried giving points to Millis on how to start a conversation, the two ended up arguing for having the same status, a commoner. Their argument reached a point where they were now listing the best qualities of their hometowns. Millis, now feeling hopeless, jumped right at Reed as she shared that she only wanted a fellow countryside friend. Elria immediately jumped in between the two and caught Millis. When Elria mentioned that she wanted to be friends with Millis, Elria suddenly thought of a dog when Millis shook her hand since she was overjoyed. After Reed and Weasel introduced themselves to Millis, she cried so much as finally gained 3 new friends. Reed then noticed that the teacher had not arrived yet, which made Millis suggest that the teacher may have lost their way. All of a sudden, a huge explosion came from the classroom entrance and destroyed the walls. A black-haired lady appeared, feeling relieved thinking that Elise might get mad if she was late. The black-haired lady then introduced herself as the homeroom teacher. The students were taken aback upon discovering that their homeroom teacher was Alma Kanos, a specially ranked mage. Alma attained this special rank due to her ability to exterminate huge disaster-level monsters single-handedly. The students were in total shock, assuming that Alma had received orders from the king to participate in a large-scale subjugation in the dragon's nest. When a student inquired about the king's orders, Alma nonchalantly responded that she had already completed them. Alma then informed everyone that both the king and the principal had personally requested her to become a teacher. After sharing her expectations for the class, Alma proceeded to outline her plans. Explaining the mechanics of qualifying as a mage, Alma emphasized to everyone that the most crucial part of the class was the evaluation. Even if they achieved the highest score individually, if their class did not pass, it would mean they wouldn't become mages. Alma reminded everyone that, as mages, their duty was not only to focus on themselves, but also to prioritize acting as a group. Alma then called out Millis and asked her about the duties of a mage. Though caught off guard, Millis managed to provide an appropriate answer, which Alma agreed with. However, Alma pointed out that there were still more duties for mages, such as evacuating the surrounding residents to a safe zone, securing evacuation routes, isolating danger zones, conducting rescues, and many other tasks. Realizing they had more responsibilities than they initially thought, some students hoped their class did not have any deadweight. Alma reminded everyone that individual evaluations would be held once a month, while class evaluations would take place 4 times a year. After reading the teaching manual, Alma found lectures to be a hassle and decided to conduct hands-on training. Using her magic item, Alma transported everyone to a separate space for a mock battle. The students were very nervous at the thought of fighting a special rank. When Alma mentioned that anyone could leave if no one raised their hand, Farag raised his hand, introduced himself, and informed Alma that he would be her opponent. Hearing Farag boasting about his skills, he was surprised when Alma mentioned that she would be fighting seriously and might break a few of his bones. When Farag immediately changed his mind about the mock battle, Elria raised her hand and seized the opportunity to fight Alma. Upon hearing Elria's name, Alma immediately recognized her since she had been given a heads up by Principal Elise. Since Elria was only permitted to use 5-tier magic, Alma decided to match her. When Alma swung her weapon, causing a wave of magic, she was amazed since Elria was able to block it so easily. After casting another spell and getting blocked, Alma assessed how Elria's spell worked and asked if she had any more spells. When Elria asked Alma if she had specific requests, Alma responded that Elria could use any type of spell. However, she would have to fight Elria for real, as Alma was curious about how many bones she would break. After Elria agreed to the terms, Reed then asked everyone to move away, warning that they could get injured if they were too close to the fight. While everyone else moved to a safe spot, Reed and Weisel decided to stay, eager to witness the fight up close. When Alma cast an offensive spell on Elria, she was surprised that Elria's lower-tier magic could compete with her higher-tier spell. Confused about what was happening, Reed explained to Reed that Elria didn't cast the spells directly but used them to cast more spells. When Reed mentioned that Elria could cast 1,000 lower-tier spells, Millis was in total disbelief. Reed explained that Elria creates a bunch of spells and puts them together. After learning about Elria's capabilities, Weasel asked Reed if he had seen the full potential of Elria's spell. Reed responded yes, as he had always kept his eyes on Elria. What made Reed crazy about Elria was that she was brighter than anyone else. As the two spells clashed, Elria was amazed that Alma could deal with all of her spells. However, she noticed that Alma was still not yet serious. Alma smiled as her charade was discovered, and she then summoned a lot of skeletons, which she called the Death Brigade. When Alma told Elria to overcome the Black Flag as if her life depended on it, Elria asked how Alma knew those words. Hitting a nerve, Elria then told Alma that only one person could say those exact words. Sensing that Elria's attitude had somewhat changed, Millis asked Reed what was going on but was surprised not to find Reed beside them. As the huge skeleton was about to attack Elria, it was immediately defeated by Reed's punch. Reed then apologized for getting in between their fight as he could not stand someone using his own words. Recognizing Reed as the other irregular Alma had been told about, she then asked Reed how he was able to send her magic flying without using magic. Reed offered to answer Alma's question if she answered his. Reed could barely recognize the flag, but after hearing his own line, it all made sense to him. Reed then asked Alma why she was holding Altyne's banner. Elise's voice suddenly echoed in the space that Alma created. After receiving an earful from Elise, Alma cancelled her spell and told Reed that they could talk about his question later. Alma then encouraged everyone to be strong like them. However, after witnessing their fight, some immediately lost hope. But Alma's words still reached some students as they gained some encouragement. Alma then asked those who had fallen asleep to wake up, as she was going to teach them the most important fundamentals as a mage, instructing everyone to run until they passed out. After Alma instructed everyone to run, she was disappointed with most of the students as they were all out of stamina. Reed, accustomed to harsh training, did not break a sweat after running, while others like Wiesel were so out of breath. Seeing that everyone could no longer move, Elria decided to use 6th tier transport magic. As everyone was being lifted up, Millis cried out, expressing her desire to take a bath. This gave Alma an idea, and she suggested that they all go to the dormitory's joint large bath. The tired Millis was re-energized after hearing Alma's suggestion, and invited Elria to join them. Alma found it convenient that while everyone was relaxing, she would have a small time to talk with Reed. At the dormitory bath, Elria had lots of questions about Reed and Alma's relationship and about the Altyne banner. Seeing Elria's body up close, Millis found it very unfair that both Elria's hair and body were silky smooth. Embarrassed that her body parts were being described, Elria immediately covered Millis's mouth. Elra wished to discuss something with Millis and asked what good gift she could think of to give to a certain person. Elria was surprised as Millis accurately guessed who the person was. Even though Elria denied the accusations, her actions had already exposed her to everyone, as they all could notice that Elria had feelings for Reed. Elria asked Millis for help about the gift since she had never given a present to someone before, and she wanted to give Reed a congratulatory present. Since Millis does not fully know Reed nor Elria, she suggested giving Reed something that he would like. Elria threw some ideas on what Reed would like. Millis liked the ideas, but as she pointed out that as a fellow country girl, she would rather have something with a more permanent form. Grateful for the idea. However, Elria immediately gave up as she could not think of anything permanent to give to Reed. Elria became depressed since she doesn't know what to give to Reed even though they have known each other for more than 50 years. As Millis pleaded with Elria to not drown herself, she asked Elria to think of the moments where Reed was happy. Elria then remembered that whenever Reed fights her, he'd always laugh and enjoy himself. As Elria expressed the type of gift that would give the same feeling when they, Reed and her, fight in battle, Millis hugged her tightly as she found it very cute. While unintentionally suffocating Elria, Millis became jealous of Reed and gave Elria her full support. Inside the classroom, Alma apologized for making Reed wait as Elise gave her an earful. Reed did not mind and immediately wanted answers as to how Alma gained the Altyne's banner. When Alma asked if Altyne was the name of a country, Reed asked her not to play dumb after using her magic tool. After seeing how serious Alma was that she had no knowledge of Altyne, Reed guessed that the Altyne banner was not something that could be recognized as a banner. Alma revealed that only people from the Kanos name who have inherited the spell knew of the banner, and she then asked Reed about his real identity and the connection he has to the banner. Reed apologized as he could not answer her question. However, she gave Alma an opportunity to ask anything aside from her first question. Reed gave the choices into Alma's hands. If she could deduce Reed's identity based on his answers, or if he could answer her without declaring anything, with those options laid, Reed would then know if he could trust her. First, Alma asked Reed about his opinion on methodical people. After hearing Reed's opinion about it, Alma then asked for his opinion about the moonshines. As for the last question, Reed asked Alma if she really was sure about it. Calling Reed Her Excellency, Alma asked if he still remembered her name. Reed smiled as he only knew one name that called him Excellency, and that was no other than Lyot. When Reed asked if Alma was related to Lyot, Alma revealed that Lyot was the name of her ancestor. Lyot was the one who made the memorandum and passed it down to their generation. Reed could not believe that Lyot would even leave a memorandum for a millennium. Alma then agreed not to ask something related to her ancestor, to which Reed pleaded not to bring up the topic again, as it was the very reason why he wanted to talk to her. After Alma made it clear that she did not know the country Altyne, as well as the banner since it has been passed down along with the memorandum. When Reed asked about the hero and Reed Friedrich, he received the same answer as what Elise had given him before. Reed remembered that Lyot did not just call him Excellency, but also Hero, yet it was not mentioned in his very own memorandum. Alma was surprised when Reed shared his theory that someone was trying to erase the existence of the hero. To manipulate a personal memorandum was logically impossible. However, Reed had already seen irrational things in reality. Curious as to why his story still existed among the elves, Alma explained the elves' oral tradition, sharing information from mouth to mouth without any medium. After learning what had happened to the elves' oral tradition, Reed instructed Alma to tell him anything moving forward, as he deduced that she knew a lot more about history. Even though Alma agreed to Reed's request, she was still annoyed that he nonchalantly gave orders to a special rank. Since Reed was well respected and loved by her ancestors, Alma left it at that and asked if Elria was the same as Reed, but was immediately disappointed at herself after realizing that she picked a fight with the real sage. The two ended their conversation as Reed counted on her for any help he might need. After the talk with Alma, several days passed. The conditional exams were now starting the day after tomorrow. Millis asked the others if they had any plans for their day off. However, she was immediately lectured by Reed that even though Elria had praised her magic, she still had to train her combat skills. Millis defended herself and asked for assistance from Elria. However, she was so sleep-deprived that she was sleeping while sitting. Millis and Weasel then asked if there was something going on between Reed and Alma, since they were becoming more friendly and as well as being called Excellency. Farag, who was also at the cafeteria, lectured Millis for being too noisy and told her to prostrate herself when apologizing to someone higher than her. Farag was annoyed when Millis refused to prostrate herself. Angered that a commoner like Millis was using the same magic Grand, Farag tried teaching Millis a lesson and cast a spell in front of her. Reed saw what Farag was about to do. He immediately jumped in between them and deflected Farag's spell. Reed then grabbed Farag's head and lectured him about the dangers of magic. After being thrown by Reed, Farag still acted out, telling Reed that a barbarian like him needed punishment. In front of Farag, Reed took his magic tool and broke it in front of him, making Farag in total disbelief. Even though Reed had saved Millis, she still found it disappointing and asked Reed to only do cool things when Elria was awake. When Elria was woken up by Millis, she was still out of her wits and immediately hugged Reed. Embarrassed by what was happening, Reed excused themselves and decided to head back first. Walking back to their dormitory room, Reed was curious as to what makes Elria very busy to the point that she was overexerting herself. When Elria responded that she wanted to make Reed happy, she then later realized that Reed was carrying her and was totally shocked. When Elria shared that she was going to push herself more, Reed agreed, but insisted that Elria do it in moderation. Wondering if Reed would not ask for the reason, Reed knew that Elria was not hiding something from him and doing something dangerous. Reed then reassured Elria that as long as he was beside her, she could relax and do whatever she wanted. The students will be evaluated from real combat to reacting to various situations during the conditional examination. The examination will be held in a huge forest area within the academy, a special location where everyone from the 8 classes would gather. Alma warned the students that the forest behind the fence was a dangerous area inhabited by monsters. After informing the students about the dangers of the monsters, Alma announced that in today's exam they are going to enter at least rank E. After informing the students about the types of monsters they might face in the forest, Alma reassured them that medium-sized monsters had already been dealt with by their teachers beforehand. Alma explicitly told the students that even though the medium-sized monsters had been dealt with, the forest was still a dangerous area where carelessness and pride could not just injure them, but also take their lives. After reminding everyone, an old man explained the contents of the conditional exam to the students. The students were given a scenario and tasked to rescue people who had wandered into the dangerous area by mistake. Since dummies were placed inside the dangerous areas, the old man pointed out that the more dummies the students could rescue, the higher their score would be. When a student asked if they should act independently since they were being evaluated individually, Alma did not answer the student, but instead gave the students the most important thing in the exam, which was to guarantee the rescue. When the explanation was finished, Alma told the students that they could discuss among themselves since they still had 30 minutes. As Reed wanted to discuss what they would do, Weasel suggested that they split up since he and Millis would just be a burden to them. But Reed clarified to Weasel and Millis that Elria aside, he needed both of their help. Reed then gave everyone a situation where the human could not move, to which Weasel and Millis gave theories from an injury to a traumatic experience that rendered the human unable to move. Reed also pointed out that since he could not use magic, he could not tend to the dummies and could not accomplish the exam. Millis finally realized that if the dummies were magic tools, there was a chance that they could not be moved unless they were healed. Reed shared his plans with everyone, where he would beat the monsters, Weasel would carry a bunch of them using his magic tool, and Millis would be in charge of figuring out the mechanism. Millis was worried at first that Elria might have to do the examination alone, but was surprised to learn that Principal Elise specifically instructed Melia to do the quest alone. Millis then finally realized why Elria was instructed to do the exam alone, so that she could be evaluated accurately. Farag called their attention as he mentioned that Reed and the others do not understand anything. Farag then shared his opinion that the exam would have more than just rescuing, and that there was another goal. Farag then mentioned that subjugating large monsters would get them an even higher reward. However, Reed and Millis immediately did not buy into Farag's idea. Farag's idea gave Weasel worry since they were not informed how the teachers would know if they had failed or not. Farag then boasted to everyone that he has the power to take on a large monster while showing his magic tool. When Reed saw the magic tool, he unintentionally insulted it by calling it really short. Farag shared that the magic tool that Reed broke was somehow miraculously repaired by the Verminen's engineer. Before leaving, Farag vowed to make Reed cry. Reed was impressed by Farag's courage even after he was embarrassed in front of everyone. Before they start the examination, Elria patted Reed's head and asked him to be careful. Walking inside the forest, Reed's group was suddenly attacked by a huge monster. However, it was just easily defeated by Reed's kick. After assessing the monster, Reed was surprised that the monster was weak despite its huge size. Weasel shared that the smell of blood could also lure other monsters and make escaping harder, so avoiding blood on their clothes would be wise. Millis could not help but worry for Elria since she was all alone, but Reed reassured her that Elria would be just fine and could defeat anything with just a tier 1 spell. Millis could not believe Reed's words when he mentioned that Elria could beat an average person with just martial arts alone. When Weasel thought Reed's movements were interesting, this sparked an energy within Reed, and he offered to show him a little. While Reed was explaining to everyone, Weasel interrupted him and told him that there was a cave up ahead. When Weasel reassured them that there were no monsters inside the cave, Reed was relieved as he already assumed that there was a dummy inside it. Millis was curious about how Reed knew that there would be a dummy inside the cave. Reed gave Millis a scenario, pointing out that the safe place for a dummy would be inside the cave. After seeing the cave up close, Reed suggested that he would take the lead while Weasel watched their surroundings, and Millis acted as their support. When Reed raised their lamp, he immediately told everyone that he had found 5 dummies. As Weasel sensed multiple mana circuits, he guessed that they would dispel if there were 2 people or more. When Millis tried activating a spell on one of the dummies, she was surprised when it suddenly moved. Millis shouting worried Reed. However, he was reassured by Weasel that she was just startled by the dummy's mechanism. After seeing a timer ticking down on the dummy's leg, Weasel theorized that the dummy most likely received a fatal injury, and the timer was the time limit to heal it. When Millis tried to heal the dummy but ended up being startled by the dummy's beeping sound, Weasel had to hit her head since she was much louder than the dummy. Reed shared an idea that the order of emergency treatment matters, and he suggested to Weasel to check the wounds. After assessing the dummy's wounds, Reed asked Millis to calm down as she started panicking again, and told her that he would give her instructions soon. While fighting off against a pack of monsters, Reed was also giving Weasel and Millis instructions on how to tend and take care of the wounds. After following Reed's instructions, Weasel and Millis were so relieved after solving the dummy's mechanism. As Reed complimented the two, Weasel could not help but ask Reed if he had seen people on the brink of death since the instructions he gave were so precise. Reed responded that he saw people who were on the brink of death, as well as those who could not be saved. Reed still thanked Weasel and Millis for performing emergency treatments even though it was just a dummy. Reed was startled when Millis suddenly shouted. When Millis mentioned that someone was coming, Reed was able to recognize them as Farag and his 2 henchmen. Weasel then asked Reed to call the 3 over as they had received heavy injuries and that something was moving in the forest. After calling Farag's attention, Reed then asked him to follow them inside the cave. When Reed asked if they were attacked by monsters, Farag could not answer properly as he was shivering in fear. When Weasel sensed that the situation was bad, Reed momentarily froze and immediately ran outside. Before going out, Reed tasked Weasel and Millis to take those who were injured and carry them deep into the cave. Farag, who once again saw the monster that attacked them, shrieked and froze in fear. Fortunately for Farag, Reed was fast enough and dragged him deep into the cave to safety. When Reed asked Farag if they picked a fight with the huge monster, Farag clarified that they did not start a fight, but rather he froze after seeing the monster, and was only protected by Valk and Lucas. As Farag cried and apologized for the two, Reed consoled and praised him for not abandoning his friends while running desperately. Before leaving, Reed instructed Weasel to cast a barrier after he exited. Farag argued that Reed won't be able to take on the monster, but Reed reassured him that he already knew the monster was immune to magic. Reed promised that he wouldn't die, and that he was just going to win like the hero he once was. 1,000 years ago, the mages of the Vegalta country accused the Altine Empire of sending huge monsters into their territory. While the soldiers of the Altine Empire were fleeing, Reed was the only one walking towards the monsters. Despite being warned, Reed continued to face the monsters head-on. Calling the monster's attention, Reed asked if it could handle his sword. In the current time, the monster was bashing its head on the cave entrance as it tried to get in. Farag was surprised when Reed informed them of the name of the monster and its purpose. Although Reed was familiar with the armored dragon, Farag insisted that they stay hidden until the Academy sends out help. Reed shared his opinion that Elria could handle the armored dragon herself, but it still depended on whether she would come. However, they didn't have much time to wait. After confirming that Weasel still had a magic tool that could create barriers, Reed asked Millis to keep healing those who were injured. Agreeing with Reed's instructions, Millis only asked him to send the armored dragon flying. Emerging from the dark cave, Reed leaped towards the armored dragon and landed a hard punch. Reed's attack was strong enough to make the armored dragon lie on the ground. Since Reed used a sword when facing the creature in the past, he did not realize how hard the dragon's armor was. But he still was not fazed since compared to Elria, the armored dragon was weak. After hitting an uppercut, the armored dragon's whole body was lifted because of the force. Reed thought that he was able to break the dragon's head, but it looked like it wasn't that simple. When the armored dragon let out a roar, Reed was surprised by the sudden tremors. He then realized that the dragon was calling for more backup. Annoyed that he may have to fight the armored dragons barehanded, Reed wondered what he should do to ensure that the others could escape safely. Fortunately for Reed, Elria arrived just in time and easily took down one of the armored dragons. When the Academy could not send out help immediately, they released Elria's limiters to help those who were in need. Glad after seeing Elria, Reed asked her to help Millis and the others to be transported. After reaching out to Millis, Elria then transported everyone inside the cave to a much safer place. After reassuring Reed that everyone was now safe, Elria received a call and was surprised when Alma asked if she sent an entire cave to their location. After confirming the students' safety, Elria was relieved and told Alma that she was not going to blow away the armored dragons along the area with Reed, and asked Alma to protect the children. As the call ended, Elria then asked if they should go all out facing the dragons. Planning on punching the armored dragons until they all would be defeated, Elria gave an item that Reed could use to go all out. Elria reassured Reed that with her magic, she was sure that the sword she created could withstand anything. As Reed received the present that Elria was developing for a while, he could not contain his laughter as he accurately guessed Elria's action. Reed was beyond happy and could not describe how he was feeling. Reed was sure that Elria's magic that had always fought alongside him could withstand his mana. Elria then realized that for a long time that they have known each other, this was the first time that they were going to battle together. Finally, a united front after 1,000 years since Reed received a very good present from Elria, he plans to show her his serious power. Even though it has been a while since Reed hasn't used the move, he knows that his body would never forget. With one strong swing of his sword, Reed was able to blow away a huge part of the forest and made a huge hole in the ground. Seeing Reed's serious power, Elria could not help but be impressed. When the sword suddenly vanished, Elria apologized and told him that it was not a sword that he could always use. Reed did not mind, as he felt really good after going all out, but he expressed that he had way more fun fighting with Elria. As Alma surveyed the area where Reed and Elria were fighting the armored dragons, she immediately knew that Elise would faint after learning of the aftermath. After Alma gave the report, Elise bawled her eyes out as she could not believe what had happened. Alma then confronted the two. Even though Elria was given permission to use her full power, Reed was praised for how he wiped out the dragons. However, they were not given permission to alter the terrain. When the two expressed that they only got carried away as it became fun midway through the fight, Elise scolded Alma for agreeing with Reed and Elria. When Elise asked how they were able to blow away the exam area, Reed and Elria nonchalantly explained that using the sword Elria created, Reed blew everything away. While Elria vowed to make a sword that Reed could use more than once, Elise asked for sympathy as she would be the one that would report the situation to the higher-ups. Alma reported that she had not received any reports from the reinforcement Elise sent, but she did notice that a piece was broken off. Alma then gave the testimonies of those who had fought the armored dragon that their magic spells were reflected or nullified. The armored dragon also managed to cut Alma's magic damage in half. Because of the armored dragon, Alma's death brigade was slowed down and easily destroyed. After learning the capabilities of the armored dragon, Elise instructed Alma to call back the reinforcement as she would get a specialist to investigate the case. After learning that Farag also encountered the monster, Alma called him and asked what happened. Farag shared that they were just exploring the area when they encountered the monster. Valk and Lucas tried to cover for Farag and ended up being injured. After assessing what the monster looked like, Farag then erased his smell by walking on Holewalker grass, and to avoid heat detection, he burnt some trees. Alma praised Farag for his decision to stay inside the cave and wait for evacuation. Alma informed everyone that they should rest first and announced that they were going to disregard everyone's rating in this test. When Alma asked the students to keep quiet about the situation for now, Millis asked for the reason. Alma shared that all instructors from the school have observed the area but not one noticed the armored dragons. Weasel deduced that the monster just came out of nowhere. Alma then shared that they still need to consider everything and would have to do a thorough investigation into the matter. Hearing Alma's announcement, Reed theorized that a third party may be involved or that the perpetrator was inside the school. After reminding everyone not to spread the news, Alma asked everyone to go now except for Reed and Elria. After dragging both Reed and Elria away from the crowd, Alma asked Reed if she could talk about the matter with the presence of Elria. Reed then revealed that Elria had more knowledge of the armored dragons than he ever did. Upon learning of the monster's name, Reed asked Alma if it was the first time they had heard of the armored dragons. After sharing that she had never fought a monster that could affect one's magic, Alma pointed out how Farag did not know of such a being. Alma shared that the Verminen family gathers all sorts of information about all monsters in each area, and that they're the most knowledgeable about monsters in the country. Elria then shared what she knows about the armored dragons with Alma, as the armored dragons are monsters that eat mineral resources, and those minerals are then used to form the creature's shells. Elria explained that the monsters don't have strong enough shells to repel magic, but if they're strong enough, just like a millennium ago, there was a chance that someone was intentionally feeding them with high-quality magic ores. Alma shared that, according to history, there were monsters that could affect magic. However, none of them remained. Alma explained that those deemed a threat to magic were all hunted down thoroughly to extinction. This explained that the armored dragon should no longer exist. After having a word with Alma, Reed and Elria were then welcomed by Weasel and Millis at the resting area. After a careful assessment, Reed expressed that it was safe to share their identity with Weasel and Millis, to which Elria also agreed. While Reed and the others were enjoying their meal, they were suddenly interrupted when Farag called them out and thanked them for saving Valk and Lucas. Farag then immediately left after expressing his gratitude. A couple of days have passed, and Reed was once again annoyed at how Elria keeps going back to sleep. Reed then reminded Elria that Alicia would get mad and annul their engagement. When Elria wished for a hug, Reed offered a piggyback instead. Seeing that they no longer have the time, Reed opened his arms and hugged Elria. After informing Elria that her clothes were in the basket, she then tried it on. However, Elria was having a hard time matching the buttons of the blouse. Elria then asked Reed to do it and was amazed when Reed was able to button the blouse swiftly. When the two finally made it to class, they were immediately bombarded with praise by the other students. Curious as to how the students knew that it was them who defeated the armored dragons, the students revealed that Farag shared the information with them. After informing the others that they can talk about it another time since the class was about to start, Reed immediately sat in his chair. When he woke Elria up, she was confused as to why he was so close. Reed then clarified that it was Elria who was the one seated close to him. Startled, Elria apologized and was embarrassed when Reed shared that being close to each other was not the first that had happened. When Reed explained what Aaliyah usually does before arriving at school, she was so embarrassed and could not help but cry. Millis then reassured Elria that everything Reed said was not heard by Weasel since she covered his ears. After clarifying their status to Weasel, Reed and Elria smiled as they asked the two not to go straight home today as they want to share something with them. When Elria and Reed revealed their secret, they were surprised at how Weasel and Millis easily accepted the truth. Curious about why Reed and Elria were the ones more shocked, Millis shared that they could now rest, knowing the reason why Reed and Elria were so extraordinary. Weasel was more convinced that Reed and Elria's powers came from something more concrete, rather than not knowing where their absurd power came from. Reed shared that there was once a county called Altine, and they were always at war with Vigalta. Upon learning that the hero was on par with the sage, Millis was curious why the hero's information had not remained in history. Reed revealed that they have already done extensive research but still could not find anything related to the hero or Altine. He also shared his theory that the story wasn't just overwritten but as if it was erased. Though they were doing their best to search for answers, they were still short-handed. While Weasel expressed his way of helping the two by searching through the records of the Blanche family since they supply the royal family's magic equipment, Millis, on the other hand, asked what she could do since she was just the normal person of the group. Millis became excited upon learning that her hometown used to be one of Altine's lands. However, she was immediately disappointed upon learning that her hometown has been nothing more than countryside for over 1,000 years. Millis became more depressed when Elria tried to console her. However, Elria clarified that Millis's hometown may be similar to how elves lived in a secluded area, and there may be a high chance that information still remained through tradition. Weasel and Millis were happy to help, but it was also clear that they could only talk about the matter with trusted people. Millis immediately became nervous when Weasel pointed out that the people who tried altering history would target them as well. Though Reed was hesitant to tell them at first, he was sure that they were able to protect them from anything. After informing Weasel and Millis of the people that knew and how they were related, Weasel was instantly intrigued by the magic equipment from 1,000 years ago. After asking for their help, Weasel and Millis reassured the two that they would do their best to help out, since they could also gain some knowledge from the past. Alma then entered the room and informed Reed and Elria that they were being summoned by Elise. When Alma knocked on the principal's office door, she informed Elise that she had brought the two. All of a sudden, Elise bowed down in front of them as she apologized. Elise explained that even though Reed and Elria helped evacuate the students and the teachers, the royal family and the Mages Association still refused to give them honor. Elise became confused when Reed agreed with the royal family's decision. Reed explained that if the information such as defeating a special ranked monster in one hit would be known to the public, it would offset the destruction of the environment. After Reed accepted the higher-ups' decision, Elise was so grateful towards them. Elise informed Reed that the association still does not acknowledge Reed's power since it was still unknown, to which they decided to have Alma investigate it. When Elise revealed that the special rank mages decided to postpone Reed's test, she was surprised at how easily Reed accepted their decision. When Elria expressed her wish to fight a special rank mage, Elise immediately slammed her head as she could no longer take the stress. Reed and the others were pleased with the outcome, as they have a good reason to meet and exchange information. After transferring to a more secure room, Alma asked Reed about his current abilities but just ended up being disappointed with his straightforward answer. When Elria shared how Reed gained a unique magic power, she shared the theory that Reed's body got stronger as a side effect of the unique power he gained. After hearing Elria's theory, Alma was curious if Reed's powers surpassed the sage. Elria also shared with the two that Reed's powers may not be natural. When Elria reminded Reed of how he used to get sick in his past life, Alma shared a theory that Reed's body may have rejected the magic at first, but ended up being accustomed to his own magic power and eventually stabilizing. After sharing the possibility that someone from the distant future may have transfused an unknown power to Reed to save him, Reed had no complaints since it was thanks to the transfusion that he was alive. Alma suddenly froze as she remembered that she was tasked to give a letter to Reed from the royal family. At the Caldwin residence, Alice was infuriated when Reed informed her that he only had 2 hours before he went to the castle. After dressing Elria and Reed, the two then went to the royal castle. Arriving at the castle, the two never imagined that they would see the castle once again. As they were being greeted by the head butler Selvas, Reed apologized for Elria's behavior and explained that she was shy by nature. Selvas then reassured Elria that he was holding down the princess with his magic. However, they were surprised the princess showed up and personally greeted Elria. Reed was surprised when Christia, the first princess of the Vigalta kingdom, suddenly hugged Elria and told her that she had missed her. While Elria was pleading for Christia not to cling on to her, Selvas expressed his apologies for such a display. Selvas explained that Christia and Elria grew up together and are treating each other like sisters. When Reed tried introducing himself, Christia interrupted him and granted Reed permission to call her Chris. When Christia informed Reed that she only approved of half of him, Reed became curious about the reason. After explaining the reason why she approved of Reed, Christia still could not believe that someone who could not use magic became Elria's rival. When Reed asked if he was summoned to confirm his strength, Christia was surprised by Reed's reaction, as if he was already used to challenges. After hearing Reed's sweet talk, Christia was surprised as Reed exceeded her expectations. Christia then shared that she may consider acknowledging Reed if he could test his love for her. Christia then announced in the royal castle the first test, which would show who loves Elria the most. After expressing how Reed was taking Elria away from her, Christia still wanted to test if Reed does truly love Elria or not. After introducing the two competitors, Selvas revealed that the winner shall be determined as to who truly understands Elria the most. When Reed expressed how he would do his best, regardless of how he only knew Elria for such a long time, while Christia boasted about how she knew everything about Elria, from what she likes to what she does not like. When Elria spoke, Christia could not help herself but cry while being warned by Selvas that she would be penalized if she acted mannerless. When it was decided that Selvas would instead read the questions before Selvas could finish reading the question, Christia already pressed the button and answered the types of books Elria likes to read. When Elria confirmed that Christia's answer was correct, she immediately showed confidence to Reed as she did not need to hear the question to know the answer. After seeing Elria, who has high expectations of him, Reed felt pressured. When Christia answered again without finishing the question, Reed guessed that Christia was using magic. Elria called Selvas' attention as she decided to make up the next question. When Elria asked what specific meal she wanted to eat if she gets tired, Christia complained since the question was really specific. When Reed gave the answer, Elria confirmed that it was correct. Elria kept giving questions that only Reed knew, to which he ended up getting embarrassed answering private questions. When Selvas informed Elria that the next question would be the final one, Elria asked what she liked. When trying to answer first, Elria gave a sign that it was incorrect. When Reed asked if they could take a break while drinking water, Elria did not expect that Christia would worry about her. Christia then visited the two while they were resting as she did not expect to treat them so warmly. Christia then reminded how she needed the help of them both. It was then revealed that Christia knew of Reed's real identity as the hero, while Reed accurately deduced that the first princess was none other than Tiana, the sage's disciple. After assessing the situation, Reed could tell that Tiana did not reincarnate, to which Tiana confirmed and revealed that she only sent her consciousness from the past using her magic. Upon learning the truth, Elria suspected that it was Tiana that made her wear all the clothes when they were young. When Elria was about to lecture Tiana, she happily obliged. Elria pointed out that Tiana should not be happy being lectured. After their emotional reunion, Reed asked if there was something Tiana wanted to share with them since she already revealed herself. Confirming that she does want to tell them something, Tiana informs the two that Elria lost all her magic, which was the cause of her death. That is the end of the recap for now. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.